Black CEO denied entry at own board meeting until she fires the entire staff. I don't care who you claim to be. Without proper identification, you're not getting past this door. The security guard's voice echoed through the marble lobby, causing heads to turn. Evelyn Porter stood frozen, her custom Armani suit suddenly feeling like armor too thin for this unexpected battle. 27 years building Horizon Innovations from nothing, and today, the most important board meeting of her career. She was being denied entry to her own building because she'd forgotten her ID badge at home. The guard's eyes narrowed with suspicion that felt all too familiar. Behind him, through the glass doors of the conference room, Evelyn could see her executive team already seated, documents spread before them, waiting for the CEO who was standing just 30 feet away, invisible. I am Evelyn Porter, CEO of this company, she repeated, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. Call Walter Simmons. Call anyone in that room. They'll confirm who I am. The guard smirked. Ma'am, I've worked here for 3 years. I know what Mrs. Porter looks like. It's Ms. Porter, and you're looking at her. What Evelyn didn't know as she stood in that lobby was that this moment of indignity would unravel a conspiracy that had been forming right under her nose for months, one that would force her to make the most drastic decision of her career before the day was through. Evelyn Porter had never been one to back down from a challenge. Growing up in Detroit in the 1970s, she'd learned early that the world would rarely make space for her. She had to carve it out herself. Her father, a factory worker at General Motors, had instilled in her a simple philosophy. Excellence doesn't ask permission to enter the room. By 16, she was already coding on a Commodore 64 her father had sacrificed a month's overtime to purchase. By 22, she had graduated summa cum laude from Howard University while working nights at a local tech startup. Now at 57, with salt and pepper locks framing a face both gentle and formidable, Evelyn had built Horizon Innovations into a $2.3 billion technology company specializing in healthcare software. The company had humble beginnings in her garage apartment in 1997, with just Evelyn and her college roommate Diane coding day and night, fueled by instant ramen and determination. Today, Horizon employed over 300 people and had offices in 4 cities. Yet despite all her success, moments like this still happened, moments that reminded her that to some, her face would never match their mental image of what power and authority looked like. Listen, Evelyn said, opening her leather portfolio. I have emails, presentation decks for today's meeting. She pulled out her business cards. I have these. The guard, his nameplate read Jenkins, barely glanced at them. Anyone can have business cards made, ma'am. Evelyn felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. Walter Simmons, her COO, was calling. She answered immediately. Evelyn, where are you? We've been waiting 15 minutes. I'm in the lobby, Walter. Security won't let me in. I forgot my badge at home. There was a pause. That's ridiculous. Put the guard on. Evelyn handed her phone to Jenkins, who listened, his expression unchanged. Yes, sir, I understand, but protocol is protocol. Without proper identification, I can't let anyone. He paused, listening. With all due respect, sir, how do I know this is really Mr. Simmons calling? Evelyn's patience snapped. Enough of this, I'll handle it myself. She took back her phone. Walter, I'll be there shortly. She ended the call and fixed Jenkins with a steady gaze. Call Marcus Hendricks in HR. His extension is 4576. He can verify my identity. Jenkins hesitated, then picked up his desk phone. While he dialed, Evelyn's mind raced. This wasn't just about a forgotten badge. Something felt off. In the 3 years she'd been coming to this building, she'd occasionally forgotten her badge and had always been waved through with a smile and an, of course, Ms. Porter. Different guards, yes, but the protocol had never been so rigidly enforced, certainly not against the CEO whose portrait hung in the lobby behind where Jenkins now stood. While Jenkins spoke with Marcus, Evelyn noticed a familiar face emerging from the elevator. Carolyn Dowd, the recently hired CFO, was walking briskly toward the conference room, nodding professionally but distantly at Evelyn as she passed. Ms. Dowd, Evelyn called out, could you please tell this gentleman who I am? Carolyn paused, glancing between Evelyn and the guard with an expression Evelyn couldn't quite read. I'm sorry I'm running late for the board meeting, she said, her voice oddly formal. I'm sure security is just following proper protocols. She pushed through the doors without another word. The interaction left Evelyn with a chill she couldn't explain. Carolyn had been with the company only 6 months, recruited from a competitor after an extensive search. While they weren't close, Carolyn's reluctance to help seemed strangely deliberate. Mr. Hendricks says he's sending someone down, Jenkins finally said, hanging up the phone. You'll need to wait. Evelyn checked her watch. The meeting had started 20 minutes ago, a meeting where she was supposed to present Horizon's breakthrough new software platform that had been her personal project for the past year. A platform that would revolutionize patient data management in rural hospitals. A platform that, if successful, would cement her legacy and the company's future. Through the glass doors, she could see Walter Simmons now standing at the head of the table, her place gesturing animatedly to the board members. Next to him stood Trevor Rhodes, the head of product development, pointing at slides that Evelyn herself had prepared. Just as she was considering setting off the fire alarm to evacuate the building, the elevator dinged and Marcus Hendricks hurried out, looking flustered. "Ms. Porter, I'm so sorry about this confusion," he said, slightly out of breath. "Jenkins is new to this location, just transferred from our Seattle office last week." Jenkins stood straighter. "I was following security protocols, sir." Marcus nodded quickly. Of course. Let's get you to your meeting, Ms. Porter." As Marcus badged her through the security gate, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Jenkins hadn't seemed like someone making an honest mistake. He'd seemed like someone expecting her and prepared to block her. "Marcus," she said quietly as they walked toward the conference room, "has anything unusual been happening around the office lately?" Marcus hesitated just long enough for Evelyn to notice. "Nothing specific, Ms. Porter, just the usual pre-launch jitters with the new platform." Before she could press further, they reached the conference room doors. Through the glass, Evelyn could see all 12 board members along with her executive team. Walter was still speaking, his back to the door. On the screen behind him was a slide she'd never seen before, one that wasn't part of her presentation. The title read, "Transition Plan, Horizon 2." Evelyn pushed open the door and the room fell silent. All eyes turned to her, expressions ranging from shock to embarrassment to most disturbing of all, cool calculation. "I apologize for being late," she said, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I had an unexpected issue with security." She looked directly at Walter. "But I see you've been keeping everyone entertained with a presentation I'm not familiar with." Walter recovered quickly, too quickly. "Evelyn, there you are. We were just discussing some contingency planning while waiting for you." "Contingency planning that requires a transition plan?" Evelyn moved to the head of the table, her rightful place. Walter reluctantly stepped aside. "I'd be very interested to hear about this plan that apparently didn't require the CEO's input." Charles Whitman, the chairman of the board, cleared his throat. At 72, he was the oldest person in the room and had been with Horizon since its early days as an investor. "Evelyn, we were going to discuss this with you privately after the meeting. Walter was simply bringing the board up to speed on some concerns." "What concerns would those be, Charles?" Evelyn kept her voice level as she took her seat, placing her portfolio on the table with deliberate calm. The room was thick with tension. Evelyn glanced around at the faces she'd trusted for years. Diane Webster, her oldest friend and the company's chief technology officer, wouldn't meet her eyes. That hurt most of all. "The market is shifting rapidly," Walter began, sliding smoothly into what sounded like a rehearsed speech. "Healthcare tech is consolidating. The bigger players are circling, and our new platform, while innovative, requires an enormous investment to scale properly. An investment we're well positioned to make," Evelyn countered. "Our financials are the strongest they've ever been." "On paper, yes," said Carolyn Dowd, speaking up for the first time. "But the projected costs for the Rural Healthcare Initiative are significantly higher than initially estimated. We're looking at a 40% increase in development costs alone." This was news to Evelyn. "Based on what data? I reviewed the projections just last week." "Based on the revised technical specifications," Trevor Rhodes interjected. "The security protocols alone will cost us millions more than anticipated." Evelyn turned to Diane, whose expertise would cut through this nonsense. "Diane, is this accurate?" Finally, Diane looked up, her expression pained. "The technical challenges are significant, Evelyn, more than we initially thought." Evelyn felt like she'd been punched. This wasn't just a disagreement over business strategy. This was coordinated, planned. "So instead of working through these challenges, you've all decided that a transition is the answer." Evelyn kept her voice steady, though anger was building inside her. "And what exactly does this transition entail?" Charles Whitman leaned forward. "Global Health Solutions has expressed interest in acquiring Horizon. They've made a very generous offer, one that would handsomely reward all shareholders." Now it made sense. Global Health Solutions was the largest healthcare software provider in the country, known for buying up innovative smaller companies and stripping them for parts. They'd approached Evelyn multiple times over the years, and she'd always declined. Their corporate culture was everything she despised, prioritizing profit over patient outcomes, treating healthcare like a commodity rather than a fundamental right. "We've discussed this before," Evelyn said firmly. "Horizon isn't for sale, especially not to global health." "Times change," Walter said smoothly. "And as CFO, Carolyn has a fiduciary responsibility to consider all options that maximize shareholder value." "As CEO, I have a responsibility to this company's mission," Evelyn countered. "A mission that would be abandoned the moment global health takes over." Charles sighed heavily. "Evelyn, we've all appreciated your vision, but sometimes vision needs to make way for pragmatism." Hey there, we'd love to hear where you're watching from. Drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to catch more stories like this one. Now, let's find out what happens next. 3 weeks later, Evelyn sat in the same conference room, facing a very different group of executives. After the mass exodus, which had ultimately included 3 board members who had been too closely aligned with Walter's faction, Horizon had entered a period of rapid transformation. Rita Fernandez, who had stood up for proper process during the contentious board meeting, now sat to Evelyn's right as the new COO. Across from her was Dr. Michael Washington, a brilliant software architect who had been leading a development team at Horizon for 5 years and now served as CTO. Next to him was Serena Martinez, formerly Horizon's Director of Finance, now elevated to CFO. And completing the new executive team was Jason Kim, who had impressed Evelyn with his integrity and innovative thinking during his tenure as Director of Product Strategy. "The security audit is complete," Michael was saying, his deep voice reassuring in its steadiness. "We've closed all the backdoors that Trevor created and implemented the new encryption protocols. Our system is more secure now than it's ever been." "And the platform?" Evelyn asked. Michael smiled. "Ready for launch. The team is actually ahead of schedule now that they're able to communicate freely about their progress." Serena added, "The financial projections remain strong." "Without the artificial inflation of costs that Carolyn was reporting, we're looking at a very healthy profit margin once we roll out to the first 50 rural hospitals." "Speaking of which," Rita interjected, "we've already got commitments from 62 hospitals across 12 states. Word is spreading fast about what we're offering." Evelyn nodded, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. "And what about the other matter?" Jason slid a folder across the table. "Global Health announced yesterday that they're suspending their rural healthcare initiative indefinitely. Their stock dropped 8% on the news." "Any word from Walter or the others?" Rita asked quietly. Evelyn shook her head. "Nothing direct, but I heard Trevor's been interviewing at startups in Austin. Carolyn's LinkedIn says she's exploring new opportunities." Walter's gone completely dark. "And Diane?" Michael asked gently, aware of the special pain that betrayal had caused. Evelyn paused before answering. "She sent me an email, a long one, explaining her side of things, apologizing, asking if there's any way to repair the damage." "Is there?" Rita asked. "I don't know yet," Evelyn admitted. 27 years isn't easily erased, but trust once broken." She didn't need to finish the thought. The meeting continued, with discussions about marketing strategies for the platform launch, recruitment to fill middle management positions vacated by Walter loyalists, and plans for the next board meeting. Throughout, Evelyn was struck by the energy and collaborative spirit in the room, a marked contrast to the tension and hidden agendas that had characterized executive meetings in recent months. As they wrapped up, Evelyn held back Rita for a private word. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," Evelyn said once they were alone. "That day during the board meeting, you spoke up when no one else would. Why?" Rita considered the question. "I've admired you for years, Evelyn, long before I joined the board. You built this company with a clear mission to make healthcare technology work for everyone, not just those in wealthy urban areas. When I saw what Walter and the others were trying to do," she shook her head. "It wasn't just wrong from an ethical standpoint. It was bad business. The rural healthcare market is vastly underserved. Your vision isn't just morally right, it's strategically brilliant." Evelyn smiled, touched by the sincerity in Rita's words. "Well, I'm grateful you saw that when others didn't." After Rita left, Evelyn remained in the conference room, looking out at the Seattle skyline. The afternoon sun glinted off the windows of nearby skyscrapers, creating a dazzling display that seemed fitting for her mood. 3 weeks ago, she had nearly lost everything she'd built. Today, Horizon stood stronger than ever, poised to fulfill the mission she'd envisioned from the beginning. Her phone buzzed with a notification, a news alert from the Seattle Business Journal. Global Health Solutions CEO steps down amid FBI investigation. Evelyn allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She hadn't bluffed about contacting the FBI after all. Once she had concrete evidence of Trevor's data breach, she'd gone straight to the authorities. The investigation had quickly expanded to include Global Health's senior leadership who had actively solicited the stolen information. Another notification appeared, this one a text from Marcus Hendricks. New security guard started today. Checked your ID 3 times and still made me come down to verify. I think we're good now. Evelyn laughed out loud at that. The incident that had started it all, being denied entry to her own board meeting, now seemed almost comical in retrospect. She'd learned later that Jenkins, the security guard, had been specifically instructed by Walter to prevent her from entering until the executive team had finished presenting their case to the board. A desperate, clumsy attempt to outmaneuver her that had backfired spectacularly. As Evelyn gathered her things to head back to her office, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a name she hadn't expected to see, Diane Webster. Evelyn's finger hovered over the screen. Part of her wanted to ignore the call to maintain the wall she'd built around the hurt of Diane's betrayal. But another part, the part that remembered late nights coding in a garage apartment, sharing instant ramen and dreams of changing the world, urged her to answer. After 4 rings, she did. "Diane," she said, her voice neutral. "Evelyn," Diane's voice was tentative, uncertain. "Thank you for picking up. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Evelyn admitted. "I understand." A pause. "I saw the news about Global Health, about the FBI investigation." "Yes, you were right about everything," Diane's voice caught. "I should have trusted you, should have come to you when Trevor first started acting strange about the security protocols." Evelyn remained silent, letting Diane fill the space. "I don't expect forgiveness, Ev. I don't even expect you to believe me when I say I didn't know the full extent of what they were planning. But I needed to tell you face to face how sorry I am. Not in an email, not over the phone." Another pause. "Could we meet? Somewhere neutral, just to talk?" Evelyn considered the request. The anger and hurt were still there, but duller now, tempered by the vindication of recent weeks and the excitement of Horizon's new direction. "The Emerald Cafe," she said finally. "Tomorrow at noon." "I'll be there," Diane said, relief evident in her voice. "Thank you, Evelyn." After ending the call, Evelyn walked through the Horizon offices toward the elevator. As she passed workstations and conference rooms, employees looked up, offering smiles and nods of respect. News of what had happened in the boardroom had spread throughout the company, taking on an almost mythic quality in the telling and retelling. In some versions, Evelyn had dramatically fired the entire executive team on the spot. In others, she'd uncovered an elaborate corporate espionage plot just in the nick of time. The reality had been messier, more painful, more human, but Evelyn didn't bother to correct the rumors. Let them have their myths. Every company needed its founding legends. As the elevator descended to the lobby, Evelyn reflected on the lessons of the past month. She had built Horizon from nothing, had guided it through economic downturns and technological revolutions, had protected its mission against those who would sacrifice it for short-term gain. But she had also grown complacent, had trusted too easily, had failed to see the threats emerging within her own executive team. That wouldn't happen again. Moving forward, she would be more vigilant, more discerning about who she brought into her inner circle, but she wouldn't become cynical or closed off. That wasn't who she was, wasn't the leader Horizon needed. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby where 3 weeks earlier a security guard had refused to recognize her. Now the new guard at the desk stood immediately. "Good evening, Miss Porter," he said respectfully. "Good evening, David," she replied, having made it a point to learn the names of every new security staff member. As she walked through the lobby doors into the cool Seattle evening, Evelyn felt a profound sense of both closure and new beginning. The company she had built had been tested, had nearly been taken from her, but had emerged stronger. And she herself had been reminded of an essential truth. That leadership wasn't just about vision or strategy or technical brilliance. It was about vigilance, about knowing when to trust and when to question. About recognizing that sometimes, the greatest threats came not from outside competitors, but from those closest to you. Tomorrow, she would meet with Diane and decide whether decades of friendship could be salvaged from the wreckage of betrayal. The day after, she would lead the final preparations for the rural healthcare platform launch. And in the weeks and months to come, she would guide Horizon toward the future she had always envisioned for it. A future where technology served humanity, not the other way around. As Evelyn hailed a taxi, the setting sun painted the Seattle skyline in hues of gold and amber. A new day was ending, and another would soon begin. She was ready for whatever it might bring. If you enjoyed this story about leadership, resilience, and standing your ground, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your support helps us bring more stories like this one to life. Thanks for watching.